Good afternoon, everyone. As it was introduced, my name is Justin George. I'm a solutions architect for Instacluster by NetApp. So it's great to be here today. We're sponsoring the event this year, and we're really happy to talk a little bit about unleashing the power of Postgres in the cloud. So hopefully things keep working for us and we will, okay. So who's had this situation? It's Monday morning, you've received an email from your manager and they said, we made a decision. We're going to migrate one of our busiest applications to the cloud. We're going to go from on-premise where it's running very happily, very safely, but we're going to change things up. This happens. Who's had this? Hands up. Yeah. Everyone knows this. It's like, oh my God, Monday morning, what am I going to do? So this is kind of the path you're looking at. Like, what decisions do I need to make? What do I need to consider? This is one of our biggest applications, so I need to think about performance, availability, backup, DR, all these things you need to consider. What does scaling look like? What does my operation model look like? And so we face this problem ourselves. So we help Instacluster. I'll get into a little bit about who we are and what we do, but we help customers do this quite regularly. So what the focus of this talk is going to be is talking about how we're going to focus on some of these capabilities and some of these decisions that you're going to need to make when you're faced with this type of situation. So let's do some testing. What are we going to test with? So obviously you need a Postgres database, pretty standard. For that, we're going to use an Instacluster managed platform. I'll get into that and talk about what that is. And we're going to choose between an Instacluster provisioned on Azure with premium SSD, and the other difference is with Instacluster managed Postgres deployment with Azure NetApp Files. Has anyone heard of Azure NetApp Files? Anybody know what that is? Great. Perfect. I'll hopefully be able to learn a little bit from this talk. We're going to use PGBench to do some testing. I'll talk through what we're doing. Pretty similar configurations, 2 terabytes on each instance type, roughly about 56 or 64 gigs of RAM, 8 vCPUs for each of the different instance types that we're going to test with. All right. So Azure NetApp Files, what is it? So Azure NetApp Files is a Azure native service which is providing high performance, highly available file services in Azure Cloud. It's got 3 different performance tiers, and that's going to become quite important towards the end. I'll show you why. And it's got some really, straight out of the gate, some great capabilities that we can talk about. It's got high availability by default. It's got multi-protocol support if we need it, instantaneous snapshotting, the kind of things that NetApp has been known for in the industry for many years. Also supporting some cross-region replication if we need to think about DR. So already by selecting Azure NetApp Files, we can tick off some of the things that we're concerned about with moving our application from where it is on premises into the public cloud. All right, so then beyond that, we're going to talk about Instacluster Managed Platform. So Instacluster is an Australian-based company which was started in 2013 to try to solve a problem that exists with open source technologies. And that problem is, how do I get support and access to team members and experts when I need them? Generally, open source is the community. It's a great community. We love the community. But if you're an enterprise and wanting to choose and run an open source technology, you either have to upskill your team members to be able to cope with this scale. If you're running a business critical application, you need to have a team of people who can operate 24/7. You then need to think about how do you do holidays and sick and all that sort of thing with those team members. And the other thing that we solve for customers is operating some of these open source technologies can be a challenge. Trying to keep up with the versions, trying to keep up with how do I patch things, what's the best practice based on my use case. These are challenging things that Instacluster have been solving for many customers over this period of time. So that's what Instacluster is. Now we actually deliver those capabilities in your cloud as a customer, or in our cloud, or on premises, we don't mind. We do deliver enterprise SLAs around availability of your open source projects as well. So for Postgres, we've got 4 nines availability. For other technologies in the suite here, we can also offer higher capabilities. So what you get with Instacluster is you get some reliability at scale. You are able to leverage us for everything from an open source perspective. And as I said, we've been doing it for a long period of time. We've probably got over 300 million node hours of operations experience doing this for customers at scale. The technologies we're specializing in are the ones down the bottom. The one I'm going to focus on today is Postgres. Now, I want to see a show of hands, if I can, of who's got 2 or more of these technologies in your environment. I know everyone's got Postgres, right? That's why we're here. All right, keep them up if you've got 3 or more. All right. Okay, who's got 4? Anyone got 4 of those technologies in their environment? Okay. Okay, who's got the full suite? Everyone's got it? Anyone got? Okay. If there was going to be one person, I want to talk to you. But this is across a bunch of technologies. We're always working on newer ones. As I mentioned before, we're 100% open source. We always try to upstream as many of the code fixes that we find in the customers' environments. We patch them, and we also contribute quite a lot to these projects as well. Enough about us. Let's start talking about building an open source solution. So let's build some Postgres. I'm going to take you through a couple of screenshots of the Instacluster provisioning console, just to show you how easy it is and the types of options you do have to provision your Postgres services. So this is just a screenshot of the Instacluster console. We're going to use the create cluster option. We're going to implement that and click that, and we get to choose the different application that we want to run. You can see there's a few different providers available there in the provider selection: AWS, Azure, Google, or on-premises. Our cloud of choice for this customer is Azure, so we're going to choose that. And you've got some additional enterprise offerings. So if you're wanting to use private networking, private link, which is another private service, PCI compliance is also an option that we also support. Once you click that and go to the next screen, you get to choose the different PostgreSQL options that you want to enable. So PostgreSQL 16.1 is running in our environment at the moment. You can select the replication strategy you might want to have, whether it's strict or not, or synchronous, full synchronous. You can also, and just a key note that we've just added PG Vector to the extension list that we offer, which is a very popular one. You guys have probably heard a few talks about that already. And we have PG Bouncer integrated by default for connection pooling. All right, now we've moved through to there. Then we get to the deployment of our data center. Where are we going to put this thing? So we've selected Azure already, so we can choose whichever Azure data center that we have configured in your cloud account. This one here is in US Central, and we're going to then provision that and select the number of nodes that we want to provision into. Now, you will see that there's a change node option here. Now, that gives us a very large selection of different nodes that are configured with different memory, CPU, and capacity options for you to provision into. You'll notice this one here in the middle, maybe a little small on screen. It's actually selected Azure NetApp files. We've got 2 terabytes of capacity attached to that particular node. And then what we do is you hit the final next button, and we get to confirm the details of what we're actually going to provision into the cluster, into your cloud account, and create that cluster. That process, the provisioning takes a couple of, maybe 5 or 6 minutes to actually spin up those resources, deploy the Postgres service, and connect it. Once those things are provisioned, you can instantly start to monitor your services. One of the key things that Instacluster offered to customers is that we run synthetic transactions, a very small number of those, on your cluster. The reason that we do that is so we get a feeling of what is actually occurring inside your cluster. We measure that for your SLA and availability. You can also then, once you've created the cluster, it pops up with your connection information. So you can just grab those and start consuming it. So like I said, it only takes a few minutes to get going, and that's what Instacluster's value is for many customers. This can also be done through an API or a Terraform, however you choose to provision your infrastructure today. All right, that's enough about provisioning. Let's start with our benchmarking. So what we're going to do is to set up our tests. And what we have to think about is when we start doing our tests, you've got to think about doing real-world testing. So we loaded the database up with about 1.5 terabytes of data. you got to watch out. If you don't do that, you can get cached results, and that's not real world. So we tried to load it up with some data. We then looped over a bunch of different client counts, scaling up as we do. We repeated those tests multiple times per configuration, and we try to minimize the variance between all of these as we loop through the different client connection counts. Now, the scripts that we ran is actually available on GitHub there, so you can download that and have a look at what we did and how we actually ran these tests, so you could repeat them yourselves if you'd like to. Okay, but we did that to do some tuning, right? So when we started doing these tests, we noticed that PostgreSQL configuration performed extremely well up until the point where the client equals the number of cores on the system that were provisioned. So the performance would drop off beyond that point in time, and that was a bit unexpected, but we had some very good Postgres team members who were supporting this testing capability, went through the logging to understand what was causing it. And it turned out there was some compression, the wall compression issues, and the BG writer delay was what we needed to configure and modify to improve the performance as we scaled. So now that we've been able to modify those settings, those settings changes actually become part of our default provisioning for all of our configurations for customers now. And next, I'm going to show you a few of the results that we saw, which are quite good. So, well, I think they're good anyway, sorry. So here we are. So I've got some results on screen. The two ones at the bottom here, you see I've got on the horizontal, I've got the client scaling, and on the vertical axis, the number of transactions we've got with a read-write workload. So as the scale point goes up with the number of clients that we add, straight off the bat, the ANF was able to achieve more than double the throughput of transactions per second in these tests. So the peak that we were able to get to, I think, was about 162% faster than the default configurations on premium SSD. So that was pretty good. And things were really interesting that when we moved it to a read-only workload, the things were even faster. So at peak, it was more than 325% faster than what we saw with the premium SSD, which was quite surprising to us. We thought it was faster, but it wasn't. We didn't think it was going to be that fast. Now, you'll notice that I've said at the beginning of the call with describing Azure NetApp files, it's important to note there were 3 different performance tiers that you could select. This one is the middle premium tier. There's a base level, there's a premium, and then there's an ultra. So we'll talk a little bit of that a little later on, but we'll get into some analysis on what we actually noted with these different configurations. So here I've got a slight table, and hopefully you guys should have all of this inside of your little goodie bag that you received when you registered at the table this morning or yesterday. And this is a summary of what we saw. So at the top you can see the transactions per second for the read-only and the read-write workload. On the Azure NetApp files was far higher for those things. We've got the management price in there and what Instaclustr charged to run those 2 different service offerings in Azure. And then we've also got the instance cost. Now, the reason I highlight those in green is that they can be provisioned inside your cloud account. So those can be part of your cloud commits, they can be part of your EDP, whichever type of contract you might have with the cloud provider. I've got everything in that solution. And as I mentioned before, Instaclustr provisioned these services so that they're enterprise grade from the beginning, which means that we include things like data protection and backup straight off the bat. This is why there's a backup cost listed there. Now you'll see that the price per month for these services are roughly around the same, 2.7 versus 2.8, 2,700 versus 2,872 per month. And when we do a dollars per transaction per second calculation, they're significantly lower on the Azure NetApp files because we're able to achieve so much performance out of that. You're paying slightly more for the disk cost for the Azure NetApp files, but you're getting a much faster result. So what this means is that at the end of the day, you're able to reduce your compute cost slightly down and use a lower spec CPU or memory system and actually save some infrastructure cost and achieve the performance results that you need. So reducing your TCO and giving you a better total cost of ownership, which is what management is always interested, right? Always interested in reducing our costs. They want everything, and think of the triangle. They want the performance, they want the cost saving, and they want the availability. So how do we achieve those three things? It's almost like having a three-legged stool. You can't take one out, right? So then the other thing that we are doing, beyond just what we've released and talked about in this integration, is that there's some ultra-fast backups using the Instacluster capability integrated with what NetApp brings to the table. NetApp is very well known for its ultra-fast snapshotting capability, so we're talking about integrating that into our service offering. We're also talking about database forking. I was mentioning this earlier today, where that actually comes from. So fast forking is a capability that NetApp have, which is a flex clone capability. We're talking about integrating that into the database realm in Postgres as well. So you can rapidly fork the database and test it with production data without having to take a huge chunk of capacity and time to create a clone of your database. And the third thing that we're releasing is disaster recovery. So cross-region replication, as I mentioned, is a capability of Azure NetApp Files. And so we're talking about integrating that to do cross-region DRs for Postgres. Now, being very interested engineers, we wanted to know how far we could push this thing. So we decided to do one more test, as you do, like how far can we actually push this thing? We know that there was 3 performance tiers on Azure NetApp Files, and we chose the middle one. We thought, what would happen if we pushed it to the Ultra? What could we get then? So this is the results of the Ultra. For us to be able to see any peak slowdown of the performance, we had to scale the CPU up to a 32-core machine. Once we were able to get to that, we could see the read-only transaction per second of this thing top out at around 74,000 with 256 clients attached. So a pretty significant number of clients and throughput for a read-only workload. All right, so in summary, what have we done? What have we been able to achieve with this configuration? All we did was just change the disk underneath, right? That's pretty effectively what we were able to do. You guys can configure this yourself because these things exist already in the Azure world. They're all native to Azure, so we're not doing anything proprietary here. You can repeat these tests and hopefully achieve the similar results that we showed here on screen. But what it actually meant for the application users in this scenario, that they got the high performance, they got the availability, and the costs, they're always going to, they were new to the cloud for this particular application, but they were happy with those. Your manager got the tick of approval because he was able to move the application to the cloud. He didn't have any complaints from the application users, which is always a nice thing. And you, moving across and hopefully into an Instacluster managed service, got more time back in your day, and you can get access to Instacluster experts when you need them. So we also have one last little thing to talk about today, and that is a quick survey. We'd love to get your feedback. We'd love to get your understanding of how you are running your environments today. So we've got a quick survey in here with a chance to win a prize, hopefully going to be delivered by Ashan down here directly to you. So I'd love for all of you to fill that survey in if you could. And that gives you the opportunity to win something. Just a few quick questions. It's not mandatory, whatever, but we'd love to get your feedback. Yes. Which one? 19. Let me go back. This one. One before, read right. Oh, the pricing? Yeah. Yes? Yeah, correct. So if in your world, in your environment, these cloud instance costs here would be paid by you directly to the cloud provider. Yep. Okay. It's row 3. That's the only cost that would be. It's a managed only for you to deliver the managed platform service to you. Great question, thank you. Are there any other questions? Cool. Okay. Yeah? Of course.
Is it like you optimize between a small file and a bigger file and
how do we do it underneath the... Well, it's the way... So all we're doing, so when you mount an Azure NetApp Files, which is an NFS-based file system to the host, right? It just appears as a normal mount point. And how Postgres writes to those files is the same as it would with a disk. It appears to be the same way. So there's no major changes. So the way that it reads and writes to it is highly optimized. Behind the scenes, I'm not sure if people know that the inside of the Azure data centers are these highly performant engineered NetApp systems which support the Azure NetApp Files. And then they're certified for extremely high workloads such as SAP HANA and other extremely high performance workloads inside of the SAP cloud. Inside of the Azure cloud. And so these are the things that is behind the scenes inside the Azure data centers that help you achieve the outcomes that you can achieve, giving you confidence to make the migrations for very high performing workloads across from on-premises or into the public cloud.
is there a configuration that I can buy NetApp file with installation?
Yes, that was that screen I showed you previously where it's already integrated into our console. So the reason that we did that was to try to minimize the amount of effort that people would need to take to do it. So we took the heavy lifting and put it already into our one of our provisioned node architectures.
Any other questions?
Yes, great question, thank you. I didn't even ask you that. But yes, so instacluster.com. If you guys would like to go to that website, you can get at the top right, there's a free trial. There's 30 days of free trial. You can provision any of the services that are on that screen there in any of the cloud providers that you choose. Now, that will be in our cloud account. There won't be the free trial in your cloud, but for the free trial, that works. The node sizes that you'll get access to in that are developer-sized nodes. Unless you put a credit card in, then we can give you access to more. Funnily enough, he's already grabbed me. We've already had conversations about that. Yes. Yes. Great alignment. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he contacted me on LinkedIn before we got here. So we were trying to catch up yesterday. I had too many customer meetings that we couldn't make it. And so we'll definitely catch up again tonight. But thank you. It's a great idea. All right, I really appreciate everybody for sitting around and listening to our talk. And I hope you feel free to sign into the survey for your chance to win a great prize. And if you want to ask us any additional questions around any other technologies that we support, I know this is a Postgres conference, but we're here at the booths over there and inside the hall there. So thank you.
Thank you, Justin, for the lively presentation.
Thank you.